Picture the steppe at dawn. Horse hooves drum the earth, bowstrings hum, riders sweep across the grass, braids streaming, trousers dusty, quivers knocking against the saddles. These are Amazons in the Greek imagination, but they were also very real, the mounted women of the Scythian and Sarmatian world who rode, hunted, and fought alongside men. Archaeology now shows that in Scythian and Sarmatian cemeteries, about one-third of female burials include weapons, and many skeletons carry war wounds. That's not legend, that's evidence. Their story begins far from marble temples, in the open sky country north of the Black Sea to Central Asia, lands where the horse was life and the bow was law. Greek travelers met these riders and spun tales. Herodotus wrote of women who wouldn't marry until they had killed an enemy. Imagine how shocking that sounded in Athens. Today, bones, arrows, and DNA fill in what myth began. There really were women who fought like men. Where did the Amazons come from? Origins, facts, and theories. For centuries, the word Amazon lived mostly in Greek stories. Queens like Hippolyta and Penthesilea, duels with Heracles and Achilles, painted on pots and carved on temple friezes. The Greeks pictured a mirror world. Riders in trousers, hair braided, armed with bows and spears, a society that flipped Greek gender rules on their head. But the Greeks were not just spinning fantasies in a vacuum. They were reacting to real people they met around the Black Sea, the Don, the Caucasus, and beyond. Scythians and Sarmatians, nomads whose women would ride and shoot as well as men. What makes this more than myth is the graves. Over the past several decades, archaeologists have opened hundreds of kurgans, burial mounds, across Ukraine, southern Russia, and Kazakhstan. In a striking share of these, the skeletons are female and buried with weapons, bows, arrows, spears, daggers, even armor and horse gear. A frequently cited rule of thumb, summarized by historian Adrian Mayor and echoed by museum and magazine reports, is that roughly one-third of known Scythian Sarmatian female burials include weapons. In some cemeteries, the share of armed women reaches 25 to 37%. That's not symbolic. These women show riding stress markers and, at times, injuries consistent with combat. Some finds are unforgettable. In 2019, a team from the Russian Academy of Sciences reported a grave near Devitsa 5, Voronezh region, containing 4 women, from a young teen to about 50, interred with spears, arrowheads, and a precious metal headdress. The mixed ages tell a simple human truth. Girls learned early. Veterans fought late. Another headline maker, DNA work on steppe burials confirming that a warrior with arrows and a bow was a 13-year-old girl, not a man misidentified by grave goods. Though a single case is not the whole story, it matches the broader pattern of women riders across Central Eurasia. But how did these women come to exist as fighters at all? Part of the answer is ecology. The open steppe favors people who live on horseback. Riding and archery start in childhood. Trousers and boots beat ropes. And on a horse with a composite bow, size matters less than skill. In small mobile clans, everyone is a stakeholder. If raiders hit at dawn, you don't ask who is allowed to defend the camp, you ride. That social logic helps explain why women in several nomadic cultures, Scythians, Sarmatians, and later Xiongnu in Mongolia, show skeletal marks of riding and archery and appear in governance. A recent genetics project on the Xiongnu also highlights strong roles for elite women along the frontier. Ancient writers even tried to tell the origin of one such people. Herodotus says Scythian youths met shipwrecked Amazon women, intermarried, and produced the Sauromatae, a nation whose girls could ride and fight and whose law required a maiden to kill a foe before marriage. Mythic? Yes, but it sounds like an ethnographer straining to make sense of real horsewomen on the horizon. So the Amazons of Greek art? They point toward actual women warriors on the steppe, now visible in kurgans and lab reports. The picture that emerges is not a fantasy kingdom of man-haters, but nomadic societies where some women trained, rode, and fought as part of daily life. Big, strong, fast. How did they fight, and how did they train? Start with the horse and the bow. The steppe's signature weapon was the composite bow, a short, recurved laminated bow of wood, horn, and sinew that packs enormous snap for its size. Replica studies and surviving examples suggest serious draw weights and lethal range. Perfect for a rider standing in the stirrups, twisting at the waist and loosing in any direction. On horseback, a skilled archer can outrun, outflank, and out-harass heavier infantry. For a trained girl who grew up riding, the bow was an equalizer. What did training do to the body? Bioarchaeology gives clues. Long-term riding can leave skeletal markers, changes around the hips, knees, and spine. Archery stresses show on the shoulders, elbows, and forearms. Several step skeletons identified as female display these wear patterns, lining up with the weapons buried beside them. Researchers have even found similar rider signals in other mounted cultures, Avar, medieval steppe, which helps us recognize the horse life in bone. Gear mattered. These riders wore trousers for mobility, leather boots, and often a belted tunic. They carried a bow, quiver, and sometimes akanakis, short sword, or a spear. Horse tack shows up in graves, bits, cheek pieces, decorative plaques. A few burials include scale armor. More commonly, we find arrowheads, many arrowheads. In one Davidsa 5 tomb, the eldest woman had a golden headdress and weapons, status and skill in a single image. And the old claim that Amazons cut off a breast to shoot better? Ancient art shows them with both. Scholars trace the myth to a false Greek etymology, amazos, without a breast. There's no archaeological evidence for ritual mastectomy among steppe women. It's a dramatic story that crumbles under the spade. Tactics? Think burst attacks. Gallop in, scatter arrows, feint retreat, wheel, shoot again. Pick off officers, prod the flanks, vanish over the horizon. Against slow infantry in tight formation, constant arrow rain breaks cohesion. Against cavalry, skill decides. Who handles the horse? Who judges distance? Who keeps the bow dry in a storm? Steppe women learned the same rhythms as men. When a clan moved, fighters rode guard. When a hunt began, they fanned out. When raiders came, they formed a circle and answered with arrows. Diet and lifestyle played a big part in their strength. Pastoralists ate meat and milk, rode daily, hauled tents, and lived outdoors. No gym required. The world was the gym. That doesn't mean they were giants. It means their work made them hard, and the record shows they bled. Historian Adrian Mayor notes many female skeletons with healed war wounds, cuts and punctures that knitted back, proof of survivors who fought again. A few vivid stories bring them close. At Davista 5, the 4 women, about 12 to 13, 20s, and 45 to 50, were buried across generations with the same warrior kit. In Ukraine and the Lower Don, single Amazon graves turn up, women with spear points, quivers, sometimes mirrors and cosmetics alongside weapons, reminding us they were whole people, not just fighters. One Russian find even yielded a ceremonial gold and silver headdress near the head of a 45 to 50-year-old woman, splendor and steel in one grave. In short, you can become what you do every day. These women rode. They drew heavy bows. They learned the fight young and kept the saddle old. The steppe wrote strength into their bones, and archaeology has finally learned to read it. Where did they go? The women whom Greeks labeled Amazons did not vanish in a single episode. Their communities belonged to steppe populations, Scythians, then Sarmatians and Alans, that shifted territories, alliances, and names from the first millennium BCE into the 1st century CE. As these groups moved and reconfigured, women who had ridden and fought alongside men continued in some places and periods, and became less visible in others. One pathway led west. Sarmatian cavalry entered Roman auxiliary services in large numbers. Although the Roman army did not recruit women as soldiers, steppe practices, stories, and techniques traveled with these units. The result was cultural diffusion rather than a formal continuation of female combat roles within Roman institutions. Another change followed from state pressure and sedentarization. As border empires, Achaemenid, Hellenistic, Roman, and later Chinese, constrained nomadic movement through treaties, forts, and regulated corridors, some steppe groups settled or stratified. In those settings, women's participation in open battle tended to decline, even as they retained roles in herding, household defense, and regional exchange. Literary transmission also shaped perceptions. Greek and Roman authors kept Amazons in a mythic register. Art motifs, set-piece battles with heroes, and anecdotes placed in an idealized past. This bias reduced the historical visibility of actual mounted women, even where they still existed. The apparent disappearance in texts reflect narrative preference more than demographic rupture. Archaeology has narrowed the gap between record and reality. From the late 20th century onward, excavations across the Pontic-Caspian steppe and Central Asia uncovered female burials with weapons, horse gear, and trauma consistent with combat. Improved osteology and ancient DNA analysis corrected earlier sexing errors and confirmed that some graves previously assumed to be male were female. These results indicated that armed women remained part of steppe societies longer and more widely than literary sources implied, though their frequency and status varied over time and by region. Comparative evidence suggested a broader pattern. In other mounted polities, such as the Xiongnu, elite women held political and economic authority and sometimes managed frontier relations. The exact forms differed, but the underlying conditions, mobility, reliance on the horse, and the tactical value of archery, favored competencies in which women could participate meaningfully. In sum, these women did not end as a distinct isolated nation that suddenly disappeared. Their roles attenuated or persisted according to ecological pressures, military demands, and the administrative reach of neighboring states. They reappeared under new ethnonyms, merged into successor confederations, and slipped from written narrative even while material evidence continued to mark their presence. The skills associated with them, riding, mounted archery, fieldcraft, migrated with their communities and outlasted the labels that once drew Greek attention. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about ancient Greece and its mythological warriors and many other mythologies, check out our book, Mythology, a captivating guide to Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, Norse mythology, Celtic mythology, and Roman mythology. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.